So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. This is Romola D from Romola D Reports, and I'm here today with the most illustrious and distinguished Elana Freeland. And as everybody knows, Elana Freeland is the author of many great books, including Chemtrails, HARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And we spoke about that a long time ago. It's been too long since Elana came on the show. And I'm so pleased to have her back again. She's also the author of Under Night Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown, which came out in 2018. And currently we are waiting, all of us with bated breath, for her new book, Geoengineered Transhumanism, How the Environment Has Been Weaponized by Chemicals, Electromagnetism, and Nanotechnology for Synthetic Biology. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about this book. I know the book is not out as yet, but we hope to be speaking about the book this afternoon. So welcome, Elana. Thank you so much for joining me today.
So good to be with you again. Your sweet face.
Oh, that is so nice of you to say, Elana. Well, you know, I, like everyone else, have been following your work quite a bit, and you had sent me the table of contents for this book, and perhaps we can just start from there, because it looks like I am blown away by the table of contents, to tell the truth. It is so perfectly and precisely laid out. It is so beautifully organized. And it seems like the kind of book that everybody needs to read at this point in time, because I think a lot of people that currently have woken up regarding what's going on in the world today and regarding the kind of runaway train that the entire sci-tech world is on.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, I spent 2.5 years writing this book. When I started, it was before the lockdown, and I was going in a direction I was satisfied with. But when the Wuhan event happened, and I was watching the footage of the streets of Wuhan and the people falling flat on their face, and whether it was whether they were actors or not, I recognized that we were being that a huge false flag event was happening right in front of me, and I immediately wondered, just from my knowledge of having written the other two books, I immediately wondered if 5G had made them fall. And so that was my introduction to this drama of the past 1.5 years, going on 2 years. And I had to glue myself to the internet to hear the breaking news, because of course, you know, I don't read mainstream media. It's all fiction and lies and deception. So I had to pay attention to all of the connections that I have now around the world of wonderful people who think Elana should know this and send me things. So, and hearing one doctor after another wake up to what their Western allopathic medicine was really up to now has been essential to writing this book. And I'm so glad that I took the time because watching videos and reading articles and papers and patents, very time consuming. I mean, I suppose I've spent thousands of hours on this book. And I'm embarrassed to tell you, Romola, that it is, you ready for this? I just heard from my formatter, it's 688 pages long.
Wow.
With photographs. That's with the photographs.
Yeah.
So I have about 60 photographs in it. And I mean, I'm really embarrassed. But when you have such a giant topic.
You have so much material.
Oh, yes. I have to go through it, and each section has to be developed. And so, and interconnected with the other sections. So I don't know of anyone more qualified to write this than myself, which sounds bizarre, you know, in a world of billions of people, that you could have just a few individuals who could actually do something. in any moment of time is rather strange. But it's life is not a numbers game. It's
No, and it also has to do with, your thinking and your understanding, which I think is what is missing in this space. There may be other writers out there who have some of the knowledge that you do, but I don't think they can see the larger picture or see into what
right.
is going on and
Right.
recognize, what's been coming down the pike and the spot at where we are today. And I think, as you say, it seems very natural to some of us listening to you, Elana, because you've been engaging with these subjects, and I know there's
Yes,
many, for a long time, right?
I have. And the irony is that this little lady sitting in the Pacific Northwest is the only one writing on this aspect of geoengineering that is basically being completely unnoticed, even by those in the so-called anti-geoengineering movement, my colleagues. So now I have made these connections to the. I had a biology second major in undergrad, and yet I really found when I was doing the research for the synthetic biology that because they have gone digital, this is digital biology, this is not molecular biology, this is synthetic biology that has gone digital. That's a very different creature from molecular biology. And so I had to really learn all over again and go through all the things that I remembered quite well and see what changes they had undergone. And they have undergone amazing changes. And I get into that very deeply in the third part of the book. You have the table of contents.
Yes,
That's
yes.
where I really lay into it. But I had to build these bigger pictures. The first section of the book is
Hmm.
over 100 pages, where I go into uh, the geoengineering itself and all the things that geoengineering is up to besides the weather. The weather
Hmm.
is certainly important, but there are deliveries being made through geoengineering, such as the nanoparticles and nanobots and nanosensors that we are breathing in because we don't know, and nanotechnology is really the name of the game now. The tiny world, I call it, and
It is.
that's all. I build a case throughout that first section that this didn't just happen as a side effect of military uh, industrial intelligence complex projects like HARP and all the things going on with the solar minimum and all the things going on with the atmosphere. No, this was not a side effect. This was an objective, was to get a
Mm,
certain technology into us
mm.
so that it could be further developed. And Clifford Carnicom was the first clarion call, and is still my good friend. And he was the one who did the research
Yeah.
into the what was falling from the skies as these jets high up passed by, and these so-called contrails behind them. He recognized immediately that these were chemical trails, not water condensation trails at all. And,
Hmm.
then the story starts from there, where he then finds these filaments in his HEPA filter and in the precipitation that he's collecting. And he starts examining these filaments through microscope and through Petri dish solutions, varying them one after another to see just what these filaments are. And then he eventually finds his way into the filaments. The filaments are polymers, but inside are some engineered parts of living inorganic creatures. I mean, living inorganic. I mean, put those two together. So we are crossing over now into a whole other scientific time with no knowledge and a lot of cloak and dagger things going on. It isn't just for profit. It isn't just to keep the money rolling in. This is about transhumanism. This is about converting human 1.0 into human 2.0, as that lovely Dr. Carrie Madej makes clear. So that's the direction I've gone, and I had to go into the part 2 to build a picture of what the smart city push really is, because there's a huge push for the smart city. And what smart always means in the context of anything scientific or technological is it means computers, it means artificial intelligence. And the trick is to figure out how we're being connected to the artificial intelligence. We tend to think of ourselves as maybe through our computers, yes, through our iPhones, which, by the way, I don't own one. We tend to think of our technology, but we're not thinking about our brain cells, and we're not thinking about what's swimming around in our blood. So that's where the pedal gets to the metal in this book, anyway, where you can actually, if you're willing to study and you're willing to really, wade through a bunch of scientific terms that I try to make clear what they mean to the best of my ability, and really begin to build your own big picture so that I think it's very important to know the time you live in. It's like, I've listened to targeted individuals through you, and to understand beyond why me, why me, why me, to understand the technology and the breadth of the programs that they are feeding with endless experiments, and the machine learning computers being fed so that they understand better and better and better what a human being can do through behavioralism. I mean, it's a lot of B.F. Skinner stuff that goes on in targeting of reaction, response, reaction, response. So, to get a bigger picture helps you to defend yourself, for one thing, but to also have a soul life while you're here under whatever conditions, so that it's your life and you are still there. And I think that's something that everyone who is being tortured in some way by mind control or stalking or whatever it is, and those of us now who are breathing in this technology that's so tiny, 1/1000th of a meter, helps us to gather our forces and to really claim our lives while we're grappling with defense procedures for the technology we're experiencing in our lives.
Absolutely.
That's what I do. That big picture is kind of how my mind works. I don't know if you ever read my Sub Rosa America series.
I need to, haven't yet.
There's not enough time to do a ton of things. But the 4 books that look at America since Kennedy's assassination from a fictional vantage point, but the fiction is pretty thin as you look at the history of what has happened here and has been lied about, of course, and covered over. In that sense too, to get that bigger picture of America helps us, on the one hand, to forgive its sins, but to also understand how carefully controlled people have been for decades.
For a very long time.
Now the control is now going much deeper into us, all the way to our genetics. So, and of course our brains. So that's the advantage of the big picture, even in a 688-page book.
Oh, well, I wanted to say that's great that it's long because, well, I personally write long. I think writing long is easier. But looking at your POC as well, Elana, and I wanted to reassure you and reassure viewers as well that you have laid this out in such a succinct and careful manner that indeed, as you were saying, you're going to be able to take the reader through all of these different scientific and technical terms and paradigms very simply, I think, and very
Yes.
easily. So it's not, it's not something that's going to be a challenge to the reader. It's something that you've taken care to simplify for the reader, to clarify for the reader, which I think is a huge thing. So,
Well,
you've
to a degree, let's not praise me too much until we see how people do. But I think if people are willing to bear down, and even if it's reading a few paragraphs and then putting the book aside and just reading all the way through the winter as we face whatever's coming at us now. I also would hope that people would form groups and get together and read aloud and discuss. I think that's terrifically
that's a great idea.
powerful. And it
Hmm.
also serves to bind us as small communities regarding the time we're living in, where true psychopaths have taken over in the name of science and technology. So yes, I try to do it so that people can read it, because I think the more you know, I think this is the important part. The more you know, the more powerful you are. As I've written in many books, when I've signed books at various talks I've given for the other two books, knowledge is power. Scientia est potentia, and it really is. And the bad guys on the other side know that too. And that's why they don't want us to do the work to learn our condition.
Absolutely. And in fact, this particular subject, the subject of geoengineering and the transhumanism that has been brought down through geoengineering, is one particular subject that they have kept under wraps so intensely and gone
Yes.
after activists so badly, for daring to speak or write of it, that it's no wonder perhaps that there are certain anti-geoengineering activists who kind of don't even speak anymore about this. It's unfortunate, it's very sad, but I kind of see the landscape now too. And I think Rob Rubin of Transparent Media Truth helped me to see that. And also, doing the panels recently, the Canacom disclosure update panels, helped me to see that. I personally see, as you see, Elana, that what Clifford Canacom has done is a huge service to humanity. He's done
Huge.
so much basic fundamental research, and I would like to report more on it. I think you certainly have, and you've brought it into the book. I was going to ask you, based on his work and based on all of the other investigations you have done into the geoengineering scenario, the nanotech scenario, can you say definitively, and I think this would help viewers understand the seriousness of the situation, can you say definitively that indeed nanotech and synthetic biology has been raining down on us at a nano level to the extent that we can't help but breathe it in? Is it in our water? Is it true? Can you say definitively that this is the case? Have we
Oh,
been?
yes. It's and uh, where you can see it in the book. Early on, I have a chapter on geoengineered fires,
Mm-hmm,
and I was grateful to Jamie Lee in California, who did
mm-hmm,
a series of, I think, over 100 videos on the California fires, and they're very good. And I I realized that what I was looking at a certain point, I realized I was looking at nanotechnology that was being used. I thought they were embers speeding along the ground, carried by wind, even from wind from the fires themselves. But no, they were not embers, nor was there wind, as Jamie Lee is very clear about during the Paradise fires. There was no wind. So what we're seeing are phalanxes of nanotechnology being remotely run, probably by one of the boys that has the desktop monitor and is sending them this way and that, because they all nanobots are. Nanobot is a nanorobot, has a transceiver in it, has a sort of brain in it by which they
mm-hmm.
can be communicated with. And you're seeing these phalanxes, these little armies of nanobots heading over to one house and setting it on fire, and then bypassing another house and then going to yet another house to ignite it. So you can really see it there in as a weapon system of the swarm mentality they have. And I think the important part is, yes, it's in our water. It's in the 6 inches of soil, because how long have we been pummeled from the skies by aluminum oxide nanoparticles, barium nanoparticles,
20 to 30
chromium.
years, right?
Yes, all of these. And these nanoparticles include nanobots, and they're in the 6 inches of topsoil, and they can be called forth by remote commands to then be programmed to do something else. I mean, it's so science fiction. I can totally understand people going, it can't be. This sounds like the invasion of the Triffids or whatever it
Yeah,
was back in the
it
50s.
was the body snatchers, but yeah.
Because these are so tiny, and we tend to think tiny
Mm-hmm.
is not that important, is not perilous. We tend to think big is perilous, but in this case, we're now in a microbe age. We're now in a nanoparticle age, and tiny is completely turning everything on its head, and we need to catch up quickly. We've only had the nano tech since about I would put it at 1990, even though it was happening right before then, but it came out big in
Mm-hmm.
1990. And yet, how many people know anything about it? I mean, it's not on the mainstream media. None of it is talked about. And that it's being geoengineered, of course, that's not being talked about, because geoengineering has been stuffed into a corner of solar radiation management, weather events, possibly here and there, maybe. It's been carefully controlled, even though it's more out in the open now, but it's hardly ever discussed in any media or anywhere. So that's why I'm bringing it to the fore for the public to realize how multifaceted it is. And it was Clifford Carnicom who really announced in his 2005 film, which I think you can get it free on the internet now, called Cloud Cover,
Mm-hmm.
or there's another version of it called Aerosol something, I can't remember, in which he talks about 7 operations that geoengineering is pursuing. And when you look at that list, you see that weather is one of them, control over the weather. And I've been very clear to everyone that all the weather is now controlled, not some of it,
Everything.
all of it. It's
The
all,
daily weather everywhere
yes,
around the world.
around the globe, not just in the United States, but the larger nations like China and Russia have caught up now, and Europe, of course, that's NATO. Yes, yes. So anyway, besides the weather, there are 6 other operations, and let me just read the names of them without going into
Mm.
detail. There's the chemical electromagnetic operations. This certainly includes weather engineering, but it also includes antimatter farming, creation and manipulation of Birkeland currents and Alvin Whistler waves, rotating electrical fields, plasma, creation of plasma in the atmosphere. I mean, all these clouds we see now, Romola, these are all
Mm-hmm.
plasma clouds. These are not moisture
Plasma.
clouds. Moisture can be added to them because the jet stream is absolutely controlled now. Okay, third one, planetary geophysical. To me, that's what the California fires were about, was to change the geophysical outline of these places, experiment, a lot of experimentation. It's basically at that level. Droughts, fires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, storms, polar vortices, solar cycles, all can be experimented with now in the rush to achieve full spectrum dominance over planet Earth. And that is part of the vision of the Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev, long time ago, back in the Cold War, who said that any nation that sought to succeed in space would first have to utterly control full spectrum dominance their planet. Then they would have to control their star. That would be our sun and its systems. And then they could move on to control the galaxy and its systems, including our entire planetary theater. So this is the hubris of the psychopaths, but it is also a very long sought desire by alchemists, all those who want to dig deeply into the experience of the earth. I don't fault all of it, but when you are making decisions that affect billions of people and their nations and their souls and their bodies and their children, then we're in a different place. That has to be really looked at. And of course, as you know, we've lost control over that. So the fourth operation that Clifford Carnicom named was directed energy weapons, not just plasma weapons in space, but actually weaponizing just about everything that where you could use a directed energy for. That would be radio waves, microwaves, gamma rays. It doesn't matter. The whole spectrum, the whole electromagnetic spectrum. Then the fifth one is surveillance and neural operations. Neural operations spells mind control. And surveillance, we all know that we're all surveilled now, and everybody's sort of settled into that. I don't know why, but it's because they don't understand how deeply that surveillance goes. What about the nanosensors that we have all inhaled and ingested in GMO foods and are vaccinated with? What about that? Those are all surveillance as well, and they're in our brain and our bodies. So then the sixth one is digital biology, nanotechnology, and transhumanism. That's where I get cut to the chase for the big event of this era of the crossover from human 1.0 to human 2.0, thanks to nanotechnology and digitizing biology, where any biologist or student of chemistry or physics can download from cataloged companies a virus that they want to transform into something. It's a complete carte blanche whoopee. And of course, there are these people are watched through these cataloged corporations and tracked and traced to see what they're doing at home. But that's the extent of it. There are no real laws over that, nor over nanotechnology, none. And then the final one is the cloaking and obscuration and detection of exotic propulsion craft and plasma life forms, which I won't go into today, but it's a brave new world out there, Romola.
That sounds, that sounds totally in the realm of science fiction. And everything that you've been talking about, these lists and, all of the expansion on these lists and subjects you've done in your book kind of point to a world that people imagine right now, because I think a lot of people are learning about the nanotech through the graphene, the findings of the graphene in the vaccines, for instance,
Yes.
etc., and learning a little bit about what this graphene can do. It can enter the cell membrane, cross the blood-brain barrier. It can electrically conduct, electricity across the cell membrane and create superconductivity and supermagnetism, etc. So people think it's just happening, but what you are pointing to is the fact that this is, and of course, anybody delving into this field of nanotech quickly finds out there are journals and journals of different aspects of this nanochemistry, nanobiochemistry. And then there's universities with programs. There's graduate students studying this. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. So where is the level of their knowledge right now? What do they know about nanotech? What can they do with nanotech? And we can
Well,
see that in what you are pointing to, for instance, the fires, the Paradise fires.
when you say we, who are you talking about we?
That's a good point. It's like, you have to dichotomize. It's not you and me, we, but it's those. I always think the guys who go to universities and take up things like robotics, artificial intelligence, nanotech, etc., they're all gung ho. They're all excited. This is new knowledge. This is emerging technologies. It's new science. They don't stop to think about the ethicality of any of it. They don't stop to think about how it's being applied. I think they're just sort of going into the science for what it is. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what they do. And to me, there's a few levels to university.
Hmm.
Certainly, undergrad is pretty conservative, and if there is robotics, and I'm sure there are lots of courses on robotics, it's all just sort of fun and game and cool, and wow, I can get this to do that, and there
Yes.
is no thinking beyond that. In graduate school, depending on the school you go to, then things change a little bit. And meanwhile, remember the intelligence agencies and the Johns Hopkins and the UPenns of this realm that really are stand out as places. MIT I'd have to add there too. All of these are the overseers of this technology. They're
Yeah.
watching for the bright kids, the ones that they're going to invest in, the ones that they won't have any moral problems with regarding the technology, in
Yeah.
order to reward them with scholarships, reward their departments with big grant monies for continued research that is probably military oriented, DARPA oriented, uh, Jason group oriented. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with the Jason group, but they are very, very important, very elite group, and that studies the science. So I think that everything was compartmentalized, and a need to know through the National Security Act of 1947, not just for departments that had intelligence aspects to them, and not just because of the Soviets at that time or enemies abroad, but to carefully control science so that many who are working on projects never really know what it's going to be used for. They have very controlled parameters to what they're doing, and that's typically how science is done in the United States, and I'm sure in China, and I'm sure in Europe as well. So that's important to think about. I don't imagine that given the mainstream media we have and the fact that many science journals, I mean, I quote a scientist in the book who says that most of the journals are just poppycock. They're not even true. That it's all lies. So I think that it's everything is very carefully controlled when you're talking about gain of function and weaponizing
Mhm.
of different biologies. Definitely, that's going to be very carefully controlled, and the nanotech at a certain level will have to be controlled because this is beyond materials science. This goes into the ability to radio frequency control nanobot swarms. And I want to talk a little about the nanobot swarm, the nanotech, nanoparticles swarm consciousness. I think it's important because if there's a ray of hope for us in sharing the world now with nanotechnology, um, and even sharing our bodies with nanotechnology, it
Unwillingly.
may lie in the consciousness of the nanotechnology. And it's well known as Tony Pantalaresco, who I always try to mention as someone who's pursuing remedies for people in order to set up a maintenance program to minimize the nanotechnology that we have in ourselves. Very important job. He has also talked about the swarm consciousness of these beings, these inorganic life forms, as they're called. So let's unwrap that a little. Okay, so I have consciousness as a human being. My consciousness is probably better than a lot of people's consciousness because I have worked very hard on it all my life. Very consciously, I've worked on my consciousness. Okay. I don't just take it for granted that because I'm not in bed and asleep, I'm conscious. No, that's not the kind of consciousness I'm talking about. I'm talking
Right.
about where you literally take yourself in hand and establish authority over yourself. I mean, when I was a high school teacher years ago, I would often kind of stride up and down the rows of all these kids who are pretty much sophomores. Sophomores are very interesting to teach. And I would say, all right, you ready? I'm going to give you the secret to life now. It's the big secret. You guys want to hear it? Yeah, Miss Freeland. Yeah, we want to hear it. We want to hear it. So I'd say, all right, this is it. If you can tell yourself what to do and you do it, or tell yourself what not to do and you don't do it, you can then do anything in life you want and succeed. Anything. I said the hardest thing in life is to have authority over yourself.
Oh, that's so major. Wow, brilliant.
And they would sit there and there'd be this moment of silence as they sort of sinking into that 15-year-old consciousness. And then, some would completely forget it, but some would remember what
Oh
I said.
yeah, I can imagine. That would have made a huge impact, I can imagine. On
So
some.
that said, if I am that conscious that I pretty much obey my conscience, I have a very active conscience. I pretty much obey it. Now and then I kind of fall off the wagon, but I get back on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my consciousness compared to the swarm consciousness of the nanotech world. Okay, the nanotechnology is in me. I know that. I can sometimes feel it moving. I can feel them moving. Particularly in my legs, down where the magnetism of the earth is strongest, because they
Mm-hmm.
love magnetism. Doesn't that make you wonder about the what's in the hydrogel that they're injecting into people now
Oh, yeah.
regarding the graphene oxide? Yes, they love magnetism. So they have their swarm consciousness. Now I'm going to translate that to mean a sort of group consciousness. But I have an individual consciousness. Evolutionarily speaking, an individual consciousness is, if it is the right kind, of course, is higher than the group consciousness. And it may even require you to go against the group now and then because you have this self-authority, which has a greater height of awareness. And that's why we always admire our saints, as we call them, like Gandhi, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
who have high consciousness but serve others. That's considered a great human being. And so, if I have this consciousness and then I'm loaded with these nanobots, can't I rule them? Can't I rule them? Can't I get to know them, not hate them, not fear them? Because hate and fear produce acidity. They love acidity. So hate and fear will not work. It must be a true authority where I take authority over them and over their masters who are remotely triggering them with 5G, 6G systems to do things to me, not just the vaccinated, though the vaccinated are particularly vulnerable now to the 5G, 6G systems. But even living in proximity to electromagnetism, where I could be controlled, or my nanobots could be controlled by someone who decides that it's time to trigger the nanobots to, make me fall on the ground, or make me lose my memory, or establish a V2K connection through my nanobots in my brain. So all of this is very possible, but isn't there just the option that I could actually develop a relationship with these creatures, these inorganic life forms, as they're called, and dominate? I think so.
It's a very interesting question, Elana. And however, I think you just pointed out something that sort of talks about how in opposition they are to us, really, because they are synthetic biology, right? And if they love acidity, what are they? Are they all wrapped up in parasites and fungi that are sort of networking inside our body? I mean, I understand that that is
Yes.
the assumptions of Morgellons, for instance. This is how they're able to sort of nest inside our bodies and spread
Yes.
out and have tentacles and networks and so forth. Isn't that directly in opposition to our human health? So if we alkalinize ourselves, for instance, which is the opposite of acidity, right? If we change our pH, as Dr. Young talks about, wouldn't we actually evict them? And maybe that's a way of dominating over them as
Well,
well.
you would, I don't know that you would evict them. Maybe if you took enough of Tony Pantalaresco's baths and his
Baths, detox
ionic
baths.
foot
Yeah.
baths and that sort of
Those
thing,
clay bats, alfalfa bats. Yeah.
you certainly quell them. You certainly quell them. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you move into, say, an area, I mean, now we have the satellites above us, right? We have the 5G,
Yeah.
6G satellites.
And
So,
actually see them.
all bets are off for the rural as being safe, quote unquote.
Mhm.
Not necessarily. And so, wherever you go, if you can establish a regime and take into account what your load is, because I mean, we've always had fungi and
That's right.
parasites, and we've always, humans deal with this.
We probably
But how
coexist with
you
them
eat,
throughout our lives. Mhm.
say it again.
We probably coexist with them inside our bodies throughout our lives, right?
Well, many of the relationships are symbiotic. And certainly I would not want to get rid of all of my flora and fauna in my intestinal tract, because they do the load of work on my metabolic breakdown. I need them. So,
Mhm.
so to me, because we're just beginning to learn about the realm of nanobots, which are semi-life forms in the sense of being conscious and of having a carbon base, now we need to really think about our own consciousness, and that's what I'm really beginning to emphasize in many of my talks and things is that it's important to really understand the era we're living in, to understand some of, not to the extent I understand it, of course, but to understand the players and the things going on, and how we are being used remotely with electromagnetic waves of one sort or another. And the important new thing to add to it is that, oh, yes, the nanobots are being stimulated and run by these waves as well. So, that's useful to a targeted individual, and it's useful to all the new targeted individuals, which pretty much is the entire population now, as far as I can tell, that we're being experimented on. We're the guinea pigs, including the ones who are basically murdered with substances and electromagnetism. So, this is our challenge, but I feel very grateful to be here for the. I mean, this is a fight worthy of my skills.
This is so interesting, Elana. You have the most unusual approach, I must say. You've got a sort of very philosophical, I wouldn't call it apathetic and resigned, fatalistic view, but there's an element of, well, here it is, it's happening. What do we do now? It's
Well,
a
yeah, but
little bit
there
of
are some of
acceptance.
us who are like special forces soldiers who really need to have our skills used because, that's.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I guess that's right. And I guess it's quite unusual though to see that you see yourself as having the skills to respond in the situation. You feel confident that you can indeed examine this
For my
scenario
small
and
part, for
address
my
it.
small part, I mean, we all have a small part, and we're all called to the fore now because the existence of the human being as Rudolf Steiner saw the human being, it's not a guarantee now. It's not a
No,
guarantee.
it's not. But what I meant really was that your philosophy, you have a sort of philosophic stance that is about, let's look at our place in terms of consciousness. We have a consciousness, we have
Yes.
an individual consciousness, we have these nanobots that are developing AI and machine learning and swarm skills and thinking together and developing brains of their own. And then you have that pitted against ours. So this represents a kind of a challenge or a mathematical conundrum that
Well, it does, but it's like comparing a human consciousness to an AI consciousness. Do you really think that there's ever going to be an AI that supersedes what a human being can be? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It will not happen. It's not just apples and oranges. It's apples and a speck of dust. It's not going to happen. But meanwhile, in the interim, in this crossover time, in which truthfully most people have been asleep for years, and I can speak knowledgeably because I have been one of the people that's been yelling and screaming about some things for about 50 years. And Americans continue to sleep in their convenience, their comfort, their desires, their lack of desire, their fears, their this. And, it's very, it's not surprising we're at the pass we're at now, is what I'm saying. The elites have purposely fed us TV, movies, endless entertainment, as Neil Postman called it in his wonderful book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. Great book. And we fell for it. I didn't, but I'm just one little person. I mean, which is the kind of back of being an individual, isn't it, Romola? That individualism is extremely valuable, but you can't just do things as an individual in this world. There are many of us involved in this, and we need to learn to work together, etc. But how can we work together if we're constantly sitting on the couch, watching TV and being fed programming, and then expect to go out and be free, or we're told that we're free, and we're anything but free. It's like that's the great thing going on now, and I'm happy to see it. Everything's out in the open if you choose to see it. I mean, I don't
Mhm.
have to really dig much at all now. It's all there. But
There's
if
a
you
lot
do,
of it that's out
yeah,
there. They're
yes,
talking openly about it. They're putting out videos. They're doing lectures and talks. They're having conferences and putting it on Zoom. And we hear
exactly.
it, so we see their dark Machiavellian machinations going on directly in full frontal view. It's quite amazing. But
Which is
you were
wonderful.
right. It is wonderful, but you're right. For a long time, we've all been under the spell of programming, as you point out, and
Hmm.
not myself certainly, but some other people, as you say, not you and I, not people who read, not people who think, not people who question, and not people who are targeted. We wake up very fast. So,
Yes,
but
yes.
I woke up, after being targeted and began to recognize what's going on as I started to delve into it. But a lot of people don't know, and I think a large part of this is also it's not just media programming, Ilana. I think it's deliberate deception because you have the written media, which the educated populace has been brought up to revere as superior to television media. this populace, the educated populace, has been utterly deceived, because
Oh,
we've been,
yes.
lies have come out of out of NPR and PBS and the New York Times, and we didn't know it until more recently, perhaps. I mean, right
And,
now the lies are writ large.
and their university training. I'm telling you, there was a reason I took 10
That's
years to get my BA and went to 5 different institutions. I didn't want to identify with any of them because I learned much more outside of the classroom. I only got the degree because I would need to teach and make a living someday. So,
right.
all right. So the idea now is people are waking up.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are not going to. They're going to die. And, is death the worst thing? No, it isn't. And we have to go back to, and I always want to mention this, that early in this revelation that is going on now, uh, we heard 2 doctors quote Rudolf Steiner. Uh, Tom Cowan, I
Oh,
remember
yes.
his speech. He quoted Steiner, and Dietrich Klinghardt
Mm,
also quoted Steiner. And both of these, I think a lot of both of these doctors. And the quote they quoted is very important and must be taken seriously by us, is the one 100 years ago when Rudolf Steiner said that one day there would be a vaccine, which if you took it, you would then never think of spiritual things again. And that is definitely an assault on the soul. So am I saying that there is a jeopardy in this particular false flag event we're undergoing now, where thousands, millions are lining up to get the jab? Yes, I am. I'm saying that there is worse than death here, and I don't pretend to be able to penetrate the mystery of what is going on at that level. I don't have that skill, but I can tell that by the frenzy with which they are forcing in any way possible to get people vaccinated, that there are big stakes, and it's not just money. It's not just transforming the human being into a cyborg transhuman. It has something to do with this soul factor, and I can only imagine the worst, and that's why it is important. And I add in to the jab, I add the PCR test, because the PCR test also is very, very dubious. They are not so interested in taking something out of you as putting
mm-hmm.
something in you with it. So
Absolutely.
if we have a war going on, which I think we do, then let's look at it as a battlefield and see, decide who we're for and who we're against, where we're going to position ourselves, come hell or high water, and then examine uh, the tools of the battle, because it's not guns, it's not the old style, it's a new style, and that's all about building consciousness. I mean, you can't go through these things and not be conscious. You simply can't do it.
That's really interesting. And this, I don't know, the whole concept of transhumanism, and people talk about the bio-digital convergence as yet to happen. But you've mentioned that it's already happened, right? We've
It's already
already
going on.
gone digital. It's already going on.
Yeah.
So everything that you are saying needs to be sort of understood within that context of the human system already being partially cyborged, being partially digitized.
Yes, we're all involved in it. And every time you read or hear a news broadcast in which they're using the future tense, translate it to the present, because
Mm.
that's one of their tactics for many years now. They always make it sound like it could happen down the road. And this I guarantee, in 688 pages, I prove it is going on right now. from every angle, every angle. You mentioned water before. I was just reading an article this morning about Ebola being found in a water supply in an area of Canada. And yeah, it's whatever it takes to make people afraid, to make them feel cut off, so that you can then funnel that fear toward the direction you want it to go.
And you
That's a
said
war.
in one that is war. So that's actually a very interesting way of looking at it. When you see it as a battlefield, and then you decide, you decide, which side
Mhm.
you stand on, and you decide what you're going to do about it. And
Right.
that advice you gave those 15-year-olds would stand all of us in good stead right now. I mean, we do have to make a decision. And the decision to be silent and let things go is no longer an option. Once
No.
you wake up and recognize what's going on, it's like, wow, your entire conscience comes aflame and you begin to realize you've got to do something.
Well,
So the
there's no
question is,
neutrality. It's kind of like Germany in the 30s. There was no
that's,
neutrality, but people thought they could be neutral. It's a
yeah, there
deception.
is no neutrality. Yeah.
There's no
You
neutrality.
No neutrality. Elana, you said in one of your recent interviews, toward the end of the interview, this was with Judith, I forget her last name, Night Flight, I think is the name of her channel.
Mhm.
You were talking about the spiritual aspect that we have as humans. And you said the fat lady has not sung yet. And I wanted to actually hear a little bit more about that, about your thinking there, because it's a very hopeful note perhaps to end this interview on as well. What exactly are you thinking of? Is it possible that those of us who have a spiritual, orientation or practice, can we affect some change in this matter?
Well, I call it the inner life, and I leave the practices up to people. But if you have an inner life, and by that I mean think of the pedophile's inner life. That is a hell no one should live in. Uh, to have an inner life, a divine inner life, you can populate it with whoever appeals to you, because I'm sure there's not any fist fight going on in spiritual realms among the good, the true, and the beautiful. No, that's not happening. So to have an inner life is to be enriched from within, not waiting for someone to approve of you from without. This helps the individual life and the individuation of the person, so that they don't fall prey to consensus, because consensus does not always choose the right thing, as I think we're seeing now with all the masks and all that. So you have this inner life. What is that inner life? Is it just yours? Is it just some little thing you keep to yourself? No, it's connected to a certain resonance in the universe of goodness, of virtue, of beauty, of all sorts of those things that we used to admire as a culture. And so you are connecting with a very large and influential stream of being. And that's kind of how I see the spiritual world that Rudolf Steiner talks about. I could look at it as a child, where the spiritual world, as I do all my work and I'm producing this book and I'm devoting all these hours to humanity, etc., out of my own volition, not because I have a big career or I'm going to be a big name or I'm going to get a lot of money. Out of my own volition, I do this. The spiritual world, in a way, in a child's mind, you might picture it as leaning down to see what else I'm up to, what else is going on, what do you need, Elana, for your time? You are worthy. What do you need? And then I say, I need the fat lady to sing for us. And and
Yes.
and the spiritual world sees how many people are in pain and how many people are reaching into their deepest parts for humanity, not just themselves, not just their safety and security and medical certainty. Not about that. It's not about that. It's about this reaching into something very large that, one night, I don't often talk about this, Romola, but one night I left my body. I was asleep. It was summer. And I flew up. I remember flying up past the moon. I could see the moon on my right. I could see the sphere. That's why I'm not a flat earther. Is the moon was definitely spherical. And I go up, and as I slide into deep space, I feel this amazing, wonderful, it's like chocolate pudding. Like I'm sliding into chocolate pudding, and it's delicious and it's wonderful. And I think I don't ever want to go back down to my life. And at the moment I think that, boom, I'm down,
Oh
hovering
no.
outside the window, looking at myself sleeping. And then I look up again, and my desire is, so up I go, up and down, up and down. I went up about 6 or 7 times. And I finally realized that that chocolate pudding I was sliding into in deep space, it was all love. It was
Mm.
all love, capital L. And I've never forgotten it. I don't know why I deserved such a wonderful experience as that, but it has fed me for years, because this universe is alive and God is somehow omnipresent in it as love. And we are all just little kids down here trying to figure out how to live material lives and be virtuous and be good, beautiful, and true. So that's what I meant. Oh, it was Judith Kwoba. Yeah, that's what I meant on Judith's program, is the fat lady
Okay.
hasn't sung yet because we're still pulling people up into this, please, I'm here, please help us move, help us. And
Mm.
to me, that's how it works.
That's really interesting. So you're saying that, that there is a spiritual world and there is a way of tapping into it,
Well,
even
that
though,
it leaves us free. You see, we're free will beings. Rudolf Steiner said that we are the religion of the gods. The human being is the religion of the gods. What did he mean by that? That we are intended to be free will beings, but that we have to get hold of our intent. It all starts when we're little with a wish, then we move to desire, then we move to this and that and that. And then finally, some of us, like myself, we move to intent. And what I put my intent into, you can pretty much take it to the bank, to use a terrible metaphor. You can pretty much depend on it, because my intent is involved. And I think Carlos Castaneda talked about intent in his books. And I found that very interesting when he talked about intent, though it's not identical to how I think of it. So if you put your intent into something, now you're in the spiritual world. You don't have to
um,
die and go there. You're in it with your intent. You have moved into your own divinity, and out of the child's wish and the person's desire, and all these other way stations we all go through in order to get to where we actually can put our intent out like a sword and make things happen. That's how it works.
that's absolutely brilliant. And that sounds like the key. I'm so glad you said that, because
Yes,
that's the key. That it
that's the
sounds like the
key.
key for everybody. You
That's the
know,
key.
you have the intent, and the intent moves you into a different space of possibility and power
Yes.
and individuality, individual strength, um, that will see you through it. And you're in the spiritual world, you're in the divine world of doing and manifesting at that stage.
And I think that's so important for us to realize, is that the spiritual world is infused into this world. But if you don't claim it, if you don't behave and take hold of yourself in a certain way and move into it, to you you feel impoverished, and you're standing right at the door, right at the door of just wealth. And that's what I mean by the fat lady sings. She will sing when it has reached its maximum and things move. That's what I depend on.
And I think we're beginning to see that more and more as more and more people are coming out and, out of their everyday jobs because of all these weird vaccine mandates. They're coming into their own power, and you see it. You see the so many nurses speaking out, so many,
Yes.
the whistleblower at Pfizer who went and got on the Project Veritas show and spoke out about the aborted fetal cells, etc.
Yes.
It's powerful, it's moving, it's fabulous to watch, but I think that's what you're talking about. You're talking about people suddenly finding themselves, finding their consciousness and
Yes.
conscience, and deciding to act just on that. And maybe, this is so hopeful to me to come to this point in this conversation, Elana, because it tells us, and you're telling all of our viewers really, that every one of us have this power. And once we've thought deeply enough about what's going on, once we've understood deeply enough, we will come to that space. And that's the space of no return, because it's movement forward into golden possibility and a change from this very dark dystopian future that they have invented for us.
And we will attract those beings who have nothing but hope for us, but have to leave us free so that we develop our own free will. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Elana, this is a wonderful note to end this conversation on. I could, spend hours speaking with you, and I know there's a lot to go through in your book. Perhaps please come back again once the book is published, perhaps, so we can speak again about the book and about everything else. But I'm so glad you spent the time today to talk about this spirituality and consciousness. Thank you.
Yes. And let me add, Romola, that people, if they want to pre-order the book, they can do so through the Rudolf Steiner bookstore in Seattle, Washington.
Okay, is there a website? Can people go to it? I can
Yes.
post the links definitely
Well,
below the
there is
video.
a website. I could send that to you.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Elana. Very best of luck toward the speedy publication of your book, which all of us are still waiting for. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.